Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. And welcome today to my review of a watch that is right up my street. In fact, it's the first time in a long time that I have opened the box on something and gone, wow. So forgive me if I'm a little biased today, you have been warned. It's the first watch by a brand called, well, what are they called? Flux? Indeed, there is an entire section on the brand's website dedicated to what their name actually means, the derivation, and how to pronounce it. Edward, the brand owner, pronounces it as Flux. But I'm Scottish, so I just pronounce things how I like. Now, these launched on Kickstarter earlier on this year. We spoke at the time, but I was too busy. I couldn't review it and I was kicking myself. The campaign was fully funded, 500% funded in fact, and he got back to me a few months ago, asked me if I'd be interested in reviewing a couple of production units. As such, this video is sponsored by the brand. I will leave a link in the description of the video to their website. You can check them out for yourself. Now, this is not what I would call a particularly original looking watch, but it is a super clean retro skin diver with a really interesting spec list. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it. All right, let's have a look at this Flux then to see what made me go, wow. Actually, I've got two of them. Does that mean they're Fluxes or Fluxi? Don't even go there, Jody. They're essentially the same watch with different dials and different bezel inserts, and I'll rotate between the two of them over the course of the video. One gets returned, but one I get to keep, and I'm going to keep the one I wasn't expecting to like as much. I thought this one, the Cali dial, would be the one that hung around, but actually, I prefer the other one. I prefer the more traditional dial layout and the more traditional bezel insert, and I'll tell you why over the course of the video. Now, there's definitely a bit of wow in the price. At the time that I'm making this video, they are taking pre-orders on these at $449, but depending on when you watch the video, if they've begun shipping them, that price goes up to $499. This is a Seiko NH38 powered watch on a strap. $500 is on the upper limits of what I think people are prepared to pay for a Seiko 4R/NH powered watch. Other than one with Seiko on the dial, of course. What do you think? Leave me a comment, let me know what the most you have and would pay for an NH powered watch is. I'll come back to that price a little later on. There's definitely a little bit of wow in the packaging though. You begin to see where some of your money has gone, and I must say it doesn't look like it has been misspent. There's a nice cardboard outer with the company tagline, vintage inspired, continually new. And inside, a little welcome card from Edward thanking you for being an OG, because if you're buying one of these, then you're one of the first people to buy a Flux and to help him launch the company. You also get a polishing cloth and a spring bar tool in that bag as well. Now beneath that, there's a very pleasant looking book-like case, again with the brand name, the tagline, and the perfect space to house your watch. It looks really nice. I have not seen this elsewhere, and I have not seen this on Alibaba. But as nice as all that packaging is, it's not why we're here. We're here because of the watch, and I think there is more than a little wow in this watch. I wouldn't necessarily call the design 100% original though. The dial design on this one, the 001, should be familiar to just about everybody who's into watches, and this vintage style has been done by Laurier, by Baltic, and by many others in recent years. And this one, the 002, with its minimalist/California dial layout, kind of reminds me of a mixture of the Baltic and a Unimatic. It definitely has that unmarked bezel and hand combo from the 01. Look, I'm definitely not complaining. I like what I see here, and I think Flux has enough going on in its own right that this one is still well worth a look. Dimensions are well considered. It's a 38mm case, but you can add 1mm more onto that because of the bezel. It therefore looks like a 39. I'm calling it a 39. It is 14mm thick though, but that includes an extra 2mm of crystal. Lug to lug is 47mm, 20mm between the lugs, and as supplied it weighs exactly 80 grams on the strap. Crystal, if you haven't already guessed it, is double-domed Hesalite today, so acrylic then. It has 200 meters of clean water resistance, and as noted, the movement is an NH38 by Seiko. No display case back. I think we've all seen more than enough Seiko NH movements to know what they look like by now. Instead, you get a very simple screw-down stainless steel affair with the usual spec sheet, the brand and model number in the middle. Now, these are all individually numbered, by the way, out of 300 pieces each, and they have etched the words OG after the brand name, once again to say thank you for helping them launch the model and therefore launch the brand. And if you haven't heard me say it 100 times already, the Seiko has 24 joules, it hacks, it hand winds, roughly 40-hour power reserve, and a pretty vague set of tolerances from the factory. But hey, if you want accuracy, go buy a quartz. The case is lovely though. Look at that side profile. I did say 14mm thick, but it wears nicely because those lugs curve down and the top 2mm are that Hesselite crystal. This is a classic skin diver case, very fine horizontal brushing on the mid case, there's a circular brush to the upper lug surface and a high polished chamfer running from the bezel crease to the tips of those lugs. There's also the tiniest little chamfer on the very edges of the lugs themselves as well. It's a 6mm unguarded crown with the Flukes logo, which is just the rectangle with a diagonal line splitting it in two. Now the bezel itself isn't thin, but the coin edge portion that you actually grip to rotate it is very thin. It's still pretty grippy though, but let's be real, this isn't the watch you choose to actually go diving with, particularly as the bezel is bidirectional and friction based. Again, a nod to the skin divers of old though. I think it goes with the rest of the specs, to be honest, as does the aluminium insert. The bezel offers just the right amount of resistance, and at least you're never going to have to deal with misalignment issues. Now the strap is an interesting one. It's made of a material called SEA-GULL, which is recycled ocean plastic. It's kind of like somewhere between sailcloth and canvas. And being vintage style, the strap has a vintage style taper down from 20 to 15 at the buckle, which is perfect. It really helps with the overall look. The strap is branded, the spring bars are quick release, and the large buckle is brushed to match the majority of the case. It was rather stiff out the box though. It took me a couple of days to break one in, including wearing it overnight. Here is the box fresh one from the California dial by way of comparison, stiff as a board. Talking of California dials, let's have a look at the dials then. This is the one that I thought I would fall for because I do like a Cali dial and I do like that minimal bezel insert. You're kind of admitting there that you're not diving with it, and that's fine. This one has the Romans at the top, the Arabics at the bottom, 3 horizontal rectangles at the 3, 6 and 9, and a rather large triangle at the 12. Brand name above the pinion, logo, depth rating and automatic, of course, beneath it. Printed minute markers around the outer edge, everything printed on very much in Fotina style. The loom therefore, as you would expect, is C3 old radium today. Now the Fotina combined with the aluminium insert and the Hesselite crystal gives this watch a lovely warmth. And that is regardless of which dial variant you end up going for. But I ended up preferring the more traditional dial with its slightly smaller triangle at 12, rectangles at 3, 6 and 9, and what the brand calls puffy loom plots everywhere else. But have you noticed yet? The circles, the puffy loom plots at the top half of the dial are larger than they are at the bottom half. I'll be honest, it took me a while to notice it. I've never seen it before, but it kind of works. Definitely one little quirk that belongs to Flukes and to Flukes alone. This one has a graded bezel insert, but only graded to 5 minutes. The triangle at 12 is loomed, but nothing else on the insert is. Hands are shared by both models. They're simple fence posts. Black surround to the hour hand, but an orange surround to the minute hand, so it dominates the dial overall. Now the second hand has also been painted black to the extent that it almost disappears on the jet black dial, save for the loomed arrowhead tip. As discussed, perhaps nothing we haven't seen elsewhere apart from those mismatched loom puffs, but if you like this retro style, then both of these Flukeses tick every single box in that regard, including when you turn the lights out. It's C3 old radium as discussed. Now that's never quite as bright or as long lasting as regular C3, but it does the job here quite nicely. Initially at least. There's a clear discrepancy though between the two different dials regarding the volume of the dial that has been painted with loom. And when I turn the speed up, it is indeed the California dial that fades first. At the end of the 20 minutes though, you can just about still see the hands, whereas with the traditional dial, yeah, it's doing quite a bit better. On wrist, I hinted that these wore very well, and they do. 38 case, 39 across the bezel, and you don't really notice the thickness because 2mm of it is with Hesselite, and those lugs point down considerably. It looks great though with that smooth insert on the 002 sitting in between two concentric rings of steel, and that lovely Hesselite sitting proudly above it. You also get a pretty clean read on the dial even from angles because you don't have the serious reflection issues that plague the vast majority of sapphire crystals. I've got a 7-inch wrist for your reference if you haven't heard me say that 643 times already, and I like this slightly smaller style of diver. The fact that the bezel is bigger than the case means it looks bigger whilst wearing smaller, which is the right way around if you ask me. If I pull back a little though, you can see that the further it is from your eyes, the more those numerals, be they Romans or Arabics, are beginning to get a bit lost on the dial. They begin to look slightly small. More on that later. And the pocket shot to finish, I think this is a super casual style of watch. It goes really well with shorts and t-shirts, especially because it's on a strap rather than a bracelet. And that's just as well because for the next 6 months, I will only be wearing shorts and t-shirts. Alright, moans and niggles. Hesalite is a polarizer. Some people will love the warmth, the richness, and how true it is to the dive watches of old. Some people will just see the scratches that it accrues oh so readily. And let's return briefly to the name. If you have to devote a page on your website to telling people how to pronounce your name, perhaps you should have picked an easier name for people to get their heads and their mouths around in the first place. I talked about the strap being pretty stiff initially, but I'll forgive it because it's made of recycled ocean plastic. The looks are very attractive, if a little derivative. I felt the markings on the Cali dial though were a bit underwhelming. The numerals and Arabics very slender to the point that I thought they were skinny. That's why I'll be keeping the 001 instead. And then there's the price. These were just under $400 during the Kickstarter, just under $450 if you ordered during the pre-order, but if you're watching this video in 2024, the price will most likely have gone up to $500. Look, it's a really nice watch, it made me go wow, and if you like what you see, then you could do a lot worse than spend $499 on it. But $499 exactly gets you a Laurier Neptune. Not only is the Laurier Neptune on a bracelet, but it has a Miyota 9000 rather than a Seiko NH38. Now, there are still reasons to pick a Seiko powered watch over a Miyota powered watch, but there's no doubt that the Miyota costs more, which means there's no doubt also that the Laurier is better value than the Flukes. It's an age-old problem with ex-Kickstarter projects. You price your early birds based on a discount against retail, which rather forces you to charge retail once the campaign's over, and by then, you're out swimming with the big fishes. I wish Edward well though, he clearly has an eye and has made a beautiful watch at the very first attempt. I hope we see more Fluxuses in the future. So there you have it. This one is definitely getting up there for an NH35 powered watch. And how do you pronounce the brand name? That'll be fun at dinner parties. But what a honey. I love the case profile, I love the dial, I love the Hesalite, and I love the version with the markings more than I thought I would. Maybe I'm just getting boring in my old age. Look, you are not short of retro dive watch reviews on this channel. Click here or here for 2 of my favourites. Thanks for making it to the end. I'll see you again in the next one.